Hey guys, welcome to Let's Play Chrono. Last time, we finished off Terra Tower and the amalgamation that was the Omni Dragon God. Whatever you want to call it. Time Devourer, Omni Dragon, whatever. It's all basically the same. As you can see, I have put together a different party for a couple of reasons. One, we've been using Fargo for quite a while, and I wanted to bring Kid in for, well, storyline reasons. And I want to bring Marcy. I showed you in the previous episode, I had her all decked out with her evade gear, 83% evade. I could set her up that way. The final boss doesn't use physical attacks, so... like I said before, let me know if the evade setup is good. Most of the things we're worried about aren't physical attacks. Decking her all out in evade drops her magic defense substantially, and you really want more magic defense than you want physical defense or evade or any of that upcoming. So I figured I'd show you that. That's her setup. Oh, well, that's almost her setup. We did find you a better weapon, so I should probably give you that. That's better. She has more damage. She almost has more damage than Kid, but Kid does have 2 power seals, and, well, she doesn't. So there's that. There's Kid's gear. I did pick up all the remaining Prism gear that I wanted. I will show you in a moment. And more of the same in there. Let's start with Surge there. Basically, nothing's really changed on him. I think I moved the Chrono Cross down a little bit as I was putting other things into place. Doesn't really matter. It would be nice to have, a few elements of each color, but other than that, I put my extra holy healing element up here. I got another slot. Surge has so many elements. You don't even have enough elements to fill his grid with like really good stuff. But there it is. And over here on Kid, we basically set up the same way. My first page is almost always identical. All the basic buffs and debuffs, turn opposite, anti whatever, usually cure plus because there's no good blue buffs. Trying to get a little bit of everything on the field there, a little bit of each color, different field effects, different turn elements, different attacking elements. Doesn't really matter. Just throw things on. The top 2 or 3 levels are usually just containing powerful elements of whatever innate we have. With Marcy here, you'll notice she has a lot of high-leveled element slots. We do have Vigor on her. That will be helpful. We've got a bunch of Cure-Alls on her. Some attacking elements. Some other elements. It's all fine. Nothing particularly special. As far as forging weapons, you're looking for all the spectral gear that you'll potentially want. The only ones I haven't forged from what's available on the list here is the staff. There's only 2 characters that use staves, and neither of which are in your party for a long period of time, even on a New Game Plus. So, entirely unnecessary to have that. And what else? No spectral gun. As soon as you can get Starkey, and you can get Starkey before Norris, you get both around the same time. You get both basically right away, and that gives you access to the plasma pistol, which is better. And what was the other one? And I didn't get an axe. Now, I do have the beta carotene, which is also a piece of rainbow equipment. I believe that's all of them I got. Yeah, I got one of everything else. Either I created it, or in the case of the Spectral Glove, we found one. Disassemble. If you want the extra piece, the beta carotene is here. You can disassemble it, get an extra rainbow piece. If you're going to pick one of the ones that I didn't get, it would be an axe, because axes are actually good, and, well, we have characters that can make use of it. The Pack of Lies might be the ultimate weapon for Sneth, but it is not rainbow, so no point in that. The reason why we want all this rainbow equipment is for New Game Plus. And we've already forged our 3 Prism Mails earlier in the game, and our 3 Prism Helmets earlier in the game. If you don't have all of the rainbow shells, the absolute kind of imperative ones would obviously be the swallow. You'll want the swallow for sure. You can make do without any of the other ones if need be, but I would definitely go for the swallow. Sword, there's a lot of people that use it. You find the glove in Terra Tower, which you can no longer get into. So you'll have that one. So yeah, the sword, the glove is definitely useful. Rod is probably one of your higher tiered ones just because the characters who use it are usually decent. If you want to use Kid in a New Game Plus, pick up the dagger. And anything else is just whichever characters you plan on using. I'll get into it a little more in detail later on, but just so you have an idea of what I've picked up. The important ones, let's return to Opacit Beach. We take the Astral Amulet. We go from another world back to Homeworld. And here is where the plot dumping continues. Get ready, I've got 2 full text block pages full of notes. Let's go. You finally made it. When did this sorry tale begin? 10 years ago when you almost drowned? Or 14 years ago when you were wounded by a panther demon that attacked you? That resulted in you being carried to Chronopolis, where you came in contact with fate and the frozen flame. Or perhaps it was 2,400 years into the future, when the time crash hurled Chronopolis back to prehistoric times. Or it could have been 12,000 BC, when the ancient magical kingdom met its end after trying to use Lavos. Each is close to being correct, yet at the same time, so far. Right answer. The true beginning was during the destruction of the ancient kingdom of Zeal. As the palace collapsed around her, Princess Scala, or however you want to pronounce her name, was sucked into a dimensional vortex along with the Lavos mammoth machine. Scala and Lavos became unified into one even more powerful entity that would evolve into the Devourer of Time. Filled with the hatred and sadness of Lavos, half of Scala's mind became set on destroying all existence. Yet at the same time, the other half of her mind desired to save the universe and to be rescued herself. She fell through the time gate. In this condition, she heard your crying echoing through time. That is when her story and yours began to intertwine. It's also when past and future begin to intersect, and when the world became divided into 2. Led by the pitiful crying the young Surge made as the Panther Demon's poison took hold of her. The sound of your crying touched the heart of Princess Scala. Before the destructive mindset could become dominant, she cloned herself and sent her copy into this dimension. Scala left her baby daughter clone with her ancient magical pendant. This was to safeguard her daughter clone in life and death situations. Pendant would rewind time a little, sending her daughter clone into a safer point in the immediate past. Kid. is a clone of Scala. There's so much to unpack here. I've got 2 pages of notes. Let's start. Okay, the reason why... Okay, the original timeline of Chrono Trigger. We saw what happened. Scala and Zeal went to the dimension beyond time, the void, whatever you want to call it, where Lavos was. Janus and the 3 gurus got sent through black portals and thrown away. It wasn't shown there, but Scala used the last of her pendant's power to send herself and Zeal out of that area and away from danger. In the timeline where Chrono saved the world, he sacrificed himself and died to Lavos at that time. Scala then used the last of her pendant's power to send our party out of the void, leaving no power remaining to keep either Zeal or Scala away from that void. Within that void, Lavos found Zeal and created the Black Omen. Then later on, Lavos found Scala and created the Time Devourer. I'm no one's daughter and no one's clone. Well, regardless of what you say, kid, that's how you feel. I think Princess Scala would have wanted it to be that way. Wanted you to be your own person. Project Kid, if you remember, was the title on the top of the room leading into the Fate supercomputer and the Frozen Flame in Chronopolis. The time control project Belthasar planned out. The whole project existed to lead you to this one special point in time. This is why I said earlier when we were talking to Belthasar, they didn't quite explain it yet, but the mastermind behind everything that's happened, it's not Fate, it's not Lavos, fucking Belthasar. The guy's playing 6D chess here. Founding of Chronopolis, the time crash, the battle between Fate and the Dragon Gods was all coordinated so that you would get your hands on the Chrono Cross and come to this place. Remember, the Chrono Cross is optional at this point. You are never required to pick it up. You will always have the ability to pick it up, but it's not required. Kid was not to know anything about this whole plan until later. Further in the future, she is meant to travel back 10 years in time from now to save Surge from drowning. In the timeline, Kid is the one who split the timeline. She went back in time and saved Surge at the point 10 years ago when in another world he died. In this timeline of Homeworld, she saves him. Kid was also meant to call Surge into the other world as he spoke with Lena here on El Paso Beach. If you remember all the way back to the beginning of the game, Surge, I think someone mentioned Surge's name and he thinks it's Lena, but it's not, and then he gets transported to another world. You're our last hope, our final chance. Only you, who came in contact with Scala and Kid, Scala's daughter clone, can do it. In the darkness that exists on the other side of time, Scala has been integrated with the Devourer of Time. Release Princess Scala from the binds the of that monster, her own hatred. You remember Masa and Mune when we went to go save Kid. Hey, it's the princess, isn't it? There were not many, albeit, but there were a couple of hints that this was to be the case. And playing the game back with knowing this in mind changes a lot. And like with any good story, going through it a second time should reveal a lot that you missed the first time. And this game is no exception. Show the life forms that exist on this planet what our new future will be. Okay, well, I did some small breakdowns. Let's break things down a little bit more. So, when Kid saved Surge in the Homeworld timeline, like, as the first time I played this game, I was like, wait, what? There's no reference to this at any point. That's what I thought for a long time. But when I started to analyze it a little more, on one of the subsequent times that we saw the flashback where we saw the Panther Demon attacking Surge on the beach, it fades out, and the next thing we see is a cutscene of Kid on the beach smiling. That is part of Surge's memory as well. Kid came back and saved young Surge and caused the two dimensions to become split. You'll notice how we don't do any time travel really in this game. Like at the orphanage, we go back and we see what happened to Kid. But we already know that she survived that. She's here now. So I don't think Surge actually did the saving in this situation. I think it was mainly there for the emotional connection. So anyway, there's two sets of dialogue with each of these three. We no longer exist in this timeline. Luca, Marley, and Chrono. It's a relief to see that you have grown into such a fine-looking lady. But of course you're beautiful. After all, you're the great Luca's little sister. So yeah, there's a connection. Luca here may be a ghost of something that no longer exists. There's a relationship between these two. Give it your best shot. Okay, yeah, you say that. You use the astral amulet. Now, remember, I complained about this at the time when we saved Kid, and she said that sometimes she passes out and forgets, and whenever she's in danger, and she wakes up and she's fine. Remember what Lucas said a moment ago. This was a magical amulet from Scala that allows Kid to basically remain protected. It's not so much that fate is controlling her destiny in the normal sense, not the computer sense. It's more that she has a guardian angel watching over her. The amulet Kid always held so dear. If you look carefully, you'll see the design on the cloth bag. It's the ancient kingdom's royal crest. Inside the bag, it's a wooden pendant. Assume my little sister had it with her or picked it up later on the night my house was razed. So Kid went back to the orphanage after the fire subsided. Found the pendant. Now the pendant was given to her by Scala. you remember the very first thing I showed of this Let's Play? It's that ending cutscene on the PlayStation version of Chrono Trigger. Luca finds a baby in a forest with a magical pendant. That was Kid. This game's plot can be incredibly disjointed, disorganized, poorly paced, plot dumping, all these things. Once you piece everything back together, it's a really cool narrative. A new species is about to be born on this planet, an alien life form even more evolved than the old Lavos. The darkness beyond time, the weakened Scala, came under the influence of Lavos, and the two became one entity. It's now up to you, the one whom the frozen flame has chosen as its arbiter. You alone can decide how the new Lavos, which has encaged Scala within it, will evolve from here. So Surge has some special input. Your actions will determine whether in the future all time is devoured by Lavos, sending the world into everlasting death. Belthasar foresaw this was going to happen in his world in the year 2300. He was determined to prevent it from happening no matter what it took. The Chrono Cross. It alone can combine the 6 of the planet that the 6 types... That is 8. Okay, but combine the 6... The sounds of the planet. That is a terribly framed sentence. You can read it. You get what they're trying to say, but that is terribly phrased. That's terrible. The melody and the harmony that brim within all life forms use the song of life to heal her enmity and suffering. Now, there's an interesting note here. There's a one-off comment from one of the researchers in Chronopolis. That researcher equates music and melody to being like DNA. Perhaps the DNA of the ones who make contact with Lavos is recomposed, as in musical composition, by the sound that they generate. Other than that, and this line here, there are very few indications that music has anything really to do with what we will eventually do. Use the Song of Life to heal her enmity and suffering. Only you can do it. Once I get the last set of dialogue out of a Chrono here, I'm going to go through the rest of my notes, which were not really in the best of order for going about this. In order to talk about half of it that I've written down, I have to go through all of this first. So let's do that. For even angels lose their way. 10 years ago, you died at this very spot. There's no mistake. You drowned. The truth is, the world in which you still are still alive is the irregularity. This is the false reality. You remember when we went to the Dead Sea in Homeworld? That's where we found the Dead Sea and the Tower of Geddon, and all the waves were frozen in place. This is the false reality that I talked about that was caused by basically undoing everything that Chrono and Party did in the previous game. This, the timeline of Homeworld ends in the destruction of the planet. There is no future in Homeworld. 10 years ago, it was Lynx who tried to kill you at this beach. All along, it wasn't really made clear how much of a villain that Lynx was, and the ties that Lynx had with Surge up until now. They really should have made this more apparent earlier on to add to the evil, because all we get for Lynx early in the game is kid doesn't like him because reasons that aren't explained until that orphanage cutscene. After Prometheus broke the link between Fate and the Flame, Fate tried to eliminate any obstacle that stood in its way. In the meantime, the 6 dragons sent Harley forth to try to gain possession of the flame. Remember, Harley was the 7th dragon of the Dark Moon, hence why this world has 2 moons. Harley made contact with Fate's biological incarnation, Lynx, and tricked him into temporarily joining forces, which explains why the dragon's agent, Harley, was working with the biological incarnation of Fate, even though they were both at war with one another. Whether Fate knew this, I don't know. The elimination of the Prometheus circuit's lock on the Frozen Flame was everyone's top priority. Lynx and Harley abducted Luca, who alone could release the Prometheus lock that guarded the flame. So that explains why they burnt the orphanage. They probably didn't have to, but in kidnapping Luca, I'm sure it wasn't an easy process. The whole attempt only ended in failure, so they waited for you to appear instead. Fate calculated you would one day cross the dimensions and try to make contact with the flame. Remember, it's this massive supercomputer from the year 2400 AD. This thing has so much information and so much processing power, considering being powered by freaking Lavos, that it has the ability to do pretty much whatever the bloody hell it wants. Until eventually it was cut off from the flame, and it lost some of its ability to do any of that. I don't know how to break it to you. Lynx was actually your father. Fucking Star Wars much? Like, it's an afterthought. It's a total afterthought. Drawing closer to the frozen flame caused him to become unstable, and the image of you dying in terror changed him completely. Finally, after having his psyche totally eroded, he lost his soul and was easily integrated by Fate. Fate turned Wazuki into the biological interface, modeling him after your worst fear at the time, that panther demon. Hence why our villain looks and is called Lynx. Although Wazuki managed to escape from Chronopolis with you, he later completely succumbed to fate. This answers a question that I haven't posed yet, but that you should have if you're following along. Surge, in his weakened condition, is taken to Chronopolis, somehow comes in contact with the frozen flame, is healed, but he's still in Chronopolis. How did he get home? Apparently, Wazuki used the last of his energy, his sanity, whatever, and was able to get him back somewhere. Whether he only got him to Marbule, whether he got him all the way home, who knows? Perhaps even fate itself dreamed of using the flame to someday reincarnate itself to a new species. Conjecture, yes, but since it's NPC dialogue, I'm assuming it's probably true. So Fate wanted to get access to the frozen flame again to reassert its power over Homeworld and to eventually evolve into some kind of a new species. Something maybe biological and mechanical. It's like when you gaze into the flame gazes back. It's up to you to decide how you want to live. You are the new Chrono Tree. There should be a little more dialogue. Alright, I went to double check the footage from the original game just to double check to make sure, because I thought there was more dialogue about it here. I guess there's not. It's more information that's been gathered from various sources and pieced together. But I'll go over it here anyway. Kid is not the only clone. Harley is also a Scala clone. Created by the Dragon God, who is part of the Time Devourer, who contains Lavos and the Dragon God and Scala, and it's very confusing. It was created by the Dragon God in response to Scala creating Kid. Harley acts as the will of the Dragon Gods in El Nido, basically the way that Lynx is the will of fate in El Nido. Considering how limited the Dragon Gods are in acting in the world, they needed this agent to work for their benefit. It's interesting if you look further into it. Harley and Kid hate each other. They're both clones, technically sisters. If you take both of them, either of them, to talk to the fortune teller in Termina, they have the exact same fortune. Two characters are never in the party at the same time. Basically, it's a yin-yang dynamic. Agents from different parts of the Time Devourer opposing each other. They also have opposing personality types. And oddly enough, they both have an interest in Surge. That is part of another reason why I had originally posed the personal theory that Surge at one point in development was supposed to be in some way related to Janus, Scala's brother, Magus. It makes a lot more sense that just because the connection, they seem close and they've called it love, they haven't called it romantic love. It might be familial love. It might be that type of bond. And I think at some point in the development of this game, that was an idea. And I think it got canned somewhere down the line. There are a few pieces of leftover information that suggest that this could have indeed been, part of the idea at one point. So we talked about why Luca's orphanage was burnt down. They were going after Luca to try and get the lock on Prometheus so that they could access the frozen flame. Lynx being the corruption of Wazuki, Surge's father. Basically, Surge made contact with the frozen flame. Now, they're not really clear on this one either. The storm that caused the downturn in power in Chronopolis that allowed Surge to come into contact with the frozen flame, that was Scala's doing. She heard Surge's cries echoing across time, and that was her response. She raged or did something so powerful it created a massive Lavos-powered electrical storm that shut down Chronopolis. And Surge was able to get contact with the frozen flame, heal himself, become the next arbiter. More on that in a moment. the same time that Surge was healed, fate made a link with Wazuki. Slowly corrupted his mind, changing him into that facsimile that we see of a panther demon working off of Surge's fears. The game talks about humans as being the children of Lavos. Actually makes a lot of sense. Look at the different aspects of Lavos that have been talked about over both games. Coming in contact with Lavos, the quote-unquote apes, evolved into humans that live in the world now. Lavos consumes the life of the planet, manipulates all life to serve its own purposes, namely, to reproduce and survive. Lavos almost seems like an amalgamation of the basic requirements for instinct and for pretty much any life on this planet. It's all genetic instinct. The dwarves accuse humans of destroying the environment for their own purposes. We know this is true, both in video game and non-video game form. Human history, both real and fictional, we've always done this. We manipulate our environment and destroy it in order to procreate, survive. It's posited that the creature that Lavos is just an accretion or amalgamation or whatever of a later evolution of humanity. Everything clumped together to create a new form, the sole purpose, reproduction and survival. Think of it in terms of what happened in Xenogears. On Disc 2, the evolution of the wells. If you're familiar with the game, think of it somewhere on that line, not philosophically, but in terms of forcing the evolution. Not a happy thought, but sci-fi elements aside, as I said, it's kind of based in reality. Like with many things sci-fi, there's a balancing act here. Adhering to the concepts of yin and yang. In this case, it suggested the material nature, the greed of humanity. That's the evil influence of Lavos. The natural, divine essence of humanity, that's the good aspect that was kind of there by itself, the nature side of things. Anyway, before we get too philosophical, back to the game. Theory goes that the arbiter, in this case Surge, is supposed to be the mediator. We heard Belthasar talking about this at Terra Tower. Supposed to be the mediator between Lavos and humanity. If the arbiter fails to mediate a good outcome, they are absorbed by Lavos, creating the Time Devourer. That being said, most people assume that Scala was the previous arbiter. That's why she was able to control the Mamma machine in Chrono Trigger. However, she failed as arbiter, fused with Lavos. The idea here is, as the arbiter, Surge is supposed to use the Chrono Cross, as Marley was talking about here. And she was saying that we needed to use it. I think Kid was saying this. We needed to finish things the right way. If not, then Surge will also join with Lavos and become the Time Devourer anew. Now, to try and wrap things up here, that voice that we saw, heard at various points in the game, if it wasn't already revealed that that was Kid, like on the beach at the beginning of the game, specifically with regards to Terra Tower, and I don't remember if they did that in Chronopolis, but throughout Terra Tower, we had a voice talk to us a number of times. That voice is supposed to be Scala. The frozen flame Lynx to Lavos, and she was fused with Lavos. Now, a little bit of speculation on my part. Lavos, as far as I can tell, outside of fan theories and like stuff that I found on wikis and stuff like that, I don't see any evidence that Lavos is sentient. In my opinion, everything that Lavos does is all genetic instinct for survival and reproduction. We saw the reproduction aspect of things in the previous game with Death Peak and the Lavos spawn. Here, it's more focused on trying to survive. There will be a few more points on this during the ending, but that's pretty much all the time we have for today. Next time, we're done talking. All we have left to do is approach this new portal, use the time egg, and go to the darkness beyond time, to the beginning and no end. Anyway, that's all for this one, and I'll see you guys next time.